Can you hear us? Yeah, wouldn't hurt. We're ready.
Let us know. Oh, it's 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome into another edition of Blackbird Singing here at Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds in Falston. We're at the lovely Tiki Bar here featuring the AFC North showdown between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers at 8 o'clock kickoff, or 8:15 kickoff, I believe it to be. And I'm here with Larry Dukes. I'm Tony Lombardi with Russell Street Report. And Larry Dukes, former offensive lineman for the Perry Hall Gators and Nick's Nasties.
Yeah.
And also currently with Red Dog Agency. So how are you, Larry?
Real good, Tony. Thank you. It's going to be a really fun night. This AFC rivalry game, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, is just the beginning of a weekend full of key games. And it's interesting talking about key games here on a third week of the season. It's very unusual to be talking about so many important things at such an early stage.
Well, we always find that the games are just as important in September as they are in December. How many times do you get to December and you say, if we had only won that one?
Yeah.
And if we had only won that game against the Dolphins that we had in the bag, up 21 points in the fourth quarter. But we'll get to that. But before we get to anything else, I did want to mention that the Ravens did, in fact, sign an edge rusher today, Jason Pierre-Paul, formerly of the Giants and the Tampa Bay Bucks. He signed a one-year deal. I checked with my cap guy, Brian McFarland, and Brian thinks it's probably a deal that's got guaranteed money of $2 to $3 million. It's a one-year deal. Got guaranteed money of $2 to $3 million with incentives that will take him up to $5.5 million. If he earns those incentives, they're pushed into the 2023 cap. So the drag on this year's cap is about $2 to $3 million. We could talk about the cap a little bit later too, Larry. But your thoughts on JPP?
Yeah, I like it. I like the fact. Well, obviously we need help, and I think while people have said that he's in the twilight maybe of his
no question,
his effectiveness, still any bit of support and his presence out there should help us a lot.
Yeah, I think it was in 2019 and 2020, the two seasons combined, he had 20 sacks. And in 2021, he was injured part of the year, so it probably held back his productivity. But the thing is with JPP that I think he does is you're seeing out there right now, Adafiowe is getting a lot of double teams. He's getting hit by one guy, and another guy's just waiting to hit him if he gets by him. So that's mitigating some of his effectiveness. Justin Houston, I think, is taking maybe 70% of the snaps right now. I don't think they really want to manage it like that. I think they want to pace him throughout the season, have him more effective in December and January. And then you're going to have Bowser being ready probably by week 5 or 6. He comes off IR. And there's a chance that David Ojabo comes on board maybe in late November, December. So as those guys come along, the more you have in your arsenal, the fresher these guys stay, and I think the overall effectiveness of the pass rush becomes more – it's a critical component because as we saw, they couldn't get much pressure on Tua on Sunday down at the bank. And when you have that kind of time to throw, and he was getting the ball out quickly, but when you have that kind of time to throw, it puts even more pressure on a secondary that just can't seem to communicate with each other.
Yeah, Jason Pierre-Paul, if he stays away from the injury bug, I mean, the last several seasons, he's had an injury each season that's knocked him out of several games. If we can have him stay healthy, and again, it's all the pieces have to line up. It's such a the NFL season being a marathon. The segments of the marathon are so important. I always look at it in groups of 4 games, and you're hoping that these players And the Ravens are looking at it the same way. They're looking at, okay, if I can get this number of snaps for these players who are in the latter part of their career, I don't want to overtax them.
Right.
If we overtax them, they're bound to get hurt. And Jason Pierre-Paul gives us a little more depth there, so Justin Houston isn't sitting there vulnerable to those types of things.
Right. So the depth helps. I think the rotations help, keeps people fresher, keeps players fresher, and the ultimate goal is to bring down the quarterback, or at least disrupt the quarterback a little bit more than they were able to do against Tua last week. So before I get into recapping the Dolphins a little bit more, Larry, I did want to make mention that for our listening and viewing audience that Jeff Zrebiec is going to be joining us in segment 3. I did an extensive interview with Jeff. I wanted to call him Jason Pierre-Paul. I did an extensive interview with Jeff earlier today, and I think you'll quite enjoy that. So the Dolphins game. You were at the game, right?
I was at the game.
Okay, so was I, and I think that we're so used to the Ravens team when the defense ruled the roost. And if you had a 3-touchdown lead going to the fourth quarter, the game is over.
Done.
Even a 7-point lead, it was over.
Yeah.
Those days are over, though, Larry.
They are. And it was the realization that that day is over hit me in about 10 minutes into the third quarter, when I realized that we live by time of possession, grind it out, close them out, and it wasn't going to happen. We could not establish that. If we were going to beat them, it came down to outscoring them. And while Lamar was fantastic, Tua was better than fantastic.
The first half he wasn't. They played a tight coverage on the back end. They confused them a little bit. But before we go a little bit further into the Dolphins, I wanted to just ask you this. If I had told you that Lamar Jackson would throw for 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, a passer rate of 142.6, rushed for 119 more yards, and scored a touchdown with his legs, and the Ravens would commit just 1 penalty for 5 yards, did not turn the ball over, Lamar would not be sacked the entire game, the Ravens would produce 473 yards of net offense, 8.8 yards per play, 11 yards per pass attempt, and they would enter the fourth quarter with a 21-point lead.
No, they won 42-7. They had to.
Unbelievable.
This is just a bad nightmare that because you would never think. There's no way that with those statistics that we can lose that game. But I watched it, and I watched it unfold, and you know what? I believed it was going to happen as it was unfolding, because it just looked like the script was written for this type of outcome.
It felt that way, you're right. And it was just one of those things where whoever had the ball last with enough time, but the Dolphins just got hot. The Ravens were falling apart. 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, Larry, kind of reminded me of the games that Vinny Testaverde's teams used to give away. But 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, 15 plays, I believe, that Marlon Humphrey missed. All 4 of those scores happened when he was out of the game.
Yeah, it hurt a lot. We need Marlon back there just for the maturity, just for the experience, so that some of the mental mistakes that, and it really came down to a couple plays where people were completely out of position,
right.
Missed coverages, and you need that maturity back there. So, we're really hoping that health-wise he's ready to go in the key parts of the game.
You and I have played the game not anywhere near this kind of level.
Right.
And if you were up by 21 points late in the game, what are you telling the guys on the back end of the defense? Don't let anything get over your head.
Right. Never let anybody get behind you.
Let them matriculate the ball down the field.
Yeah.
And eat up the clock in the process.
Yeah, there's absolutely – you almost want to play that defense, a Hail Mary defense that we saw a couple plays this weekend. Put 6 guys back there. Don't let anybody get behind you, especially those 2 guys.
And chances are they're still going to try to force the quick score, and maybe you get another pick.
Right.
So this first play I wanted to show, this is Tua's first deep pass from 49 yards out to Tyreek Hill, and it's a 3rd and 10, and you're thinking that, maybe the Ravens get off out of this. It's going to be 2-down territory there, but Kyle Hamilton, he bites on a little crossing route from Jalen Waddle, lets Tyreek Hill, the fastest guy in the NFL, go right by Peters. Peters looks like he had the coverage that he was supposed to have.
Yeah.
He didn't have any center field help from Kyle Hamilton.
That deep center was just left wide open, and, as you said, bit on something underneath.
And he actually got pressured a little bit there. Houston was coming around the end, but he was so wide open he could just lay it up. And if Hamilton's playing center field the way he's supposed to, he probably has his first NFL interception.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the second play, another deep pass to Tyreek Hill. It looks like in this play that Jalen Armour-Davis lets Hill go by him.
Yeah.
He's got a short zone.
Yeah, he's thinking he's
looking
got three
for
deep back there.
Over the top, cover 2 coverage from one of the safeties. The safeties get caught up, both of them near the line of scrimmage. It just blew my mind. When I saw that live, I'm saying, what are these guys doing by the line of scrimmage when you've got 2 speed demons in the form of Waddle and Hill?
Yep, and Armour-Davis played a good game otherwise.
I don't put that on him at all.
No.
Again, that's a miscommunication.
Yeah.
Larry, how many of the miscommunications did we hear about last year?
Yeah. Yep.
How many times in the last 19 games have we seen big scores against the Ravens defense because of these so-called miscommunications? This is not rocket science.
No, not at all. And there's just some fundamental things that you got to repair. And the communication, just a complete breakdown.
I wonder sometimes if the defense is too complex for these guys to process in a short amount of time that they've worked with Mike McDonald. I don't know. I think in those situations, it's the KISS approach. Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this week and going forward, I would expect that it's going to be rather simple in the coverages that we're placing at specific times. And let's hope that this is the beginning of the repair. Rather get them out now and get better as time goes on and really peak at the right time of the year. Wish it didn't happen at all, but if it's going to happen, let it happen early.
Well, we have seen the Ravens respond to adversity many times in the past, and I think this is where John Harbaugh really shines, and he's able to rally the troops. And I can say this too, Larry, that the players let this roll off their back a lot faster than the fans do. This sits in the craw of the fan base all week long until there's another game.
Until Thursday, right?
These guys, after they go through the film session, they're off on Tuesdays, back to work on Wednesday. They've forgotten about this game.
They have to. They have to have short memories here, because otherwise, if they dwell on it, the mistakes, when you make mistakes in life, if you dwell on them, you're going to make more.
Right.
And bigger ones. So you got to let it go. You got to move on. It's a marathon. Okay. Again, your season is not defined by 1 week.
This game reminded me of a game back in the 2019 season. And during that season, they played the Cleveland Browns. I think it was game 4. It was at home. And Nick Chubb went crazy on the Ravens. They had no answer at all.
Yep.
And whenever the Ravens seemed to answer a touchdown and get back in the game, Chubb was there to answer again. And then there were blown coverages in that game as well in the secondary. Tony Jefferson, I think, missed a couple of plays, and Marlon Humphrey got caught out of position. They went and acquired Marcus Peters.
Right. And
I think at week 6.
Right. And then we go on like a winning streak that
lasted.
That
game, when they lost that game to the Browns, they were 2-2 after that game. They went on a 12-game winning streak after that.
Yeah.
So they learned from their lessons there. And if you recall, they went out and got Josh Bynes, and I think they picked up another linebacker because the guys that the Ravens had running at the middle linebacker weren't doing their job. There was a lot of chaos there and covering the tight end and whatnot. So they made the changes. They made the additions to get right for the rest of the season, because let's face it, there's 15 more games, 15 more chances to get this right, and I believe in the intestinal fortitude of this team.
Yeah, and I think, as you just said, John Harbaugh, this is when he excels. Adversity in front of him, he's able to rally his team to turn it around, not make the same mistakes over and over. And I think this same potential exists that we could see that wake-up call. I remember, I don't know the exact quote, but Bobby Knight at one time talked about the good having a bad game early in the season. It sets the standards going forward and gets you refocused on the job at hand. So
I'd rather have this loss in game 2 than in week
game
16
12.
or
Exactly.
what have you. So let's take a short break, Larry. When we return, we'll take a look at some video of the Ravens offense. We're live from beautiful Uncle Hawaiian Grinds here at 2315 Bel Air Road in Falston. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
D&L Window Tinting, a family-owned business for over 30 years, has everything you need to protect your most treasured assets from the sun's detrimental ultraviolet rays. Protect your car, your home, and of course your family. Every day your vehicle battles rocks, sand, dirt, scratches, road debris, and bugs, all of which can eat away at your car's paint. Your vehicle's windows and those at home, when unprotected, can bleach your seats, furniture, carpeting, and more while driving up energy costs. Let D&L help. D&L Window Tinting. They put the shade on the sun.
Stock down. Is that where we're going to go first?
Quick, get that lady over here. You got it, doctor? She has a severe lack of Royal Farms coffee.
Yeah, real well.
The freshest in the world. She needs a cup. Stat! This chicken needs Royal Farms world-famous chicken. ASAP.
You're gonna give a chicken? Chicken?
Just do it already. We are not going to lose this chicken.
Can't you tell him? Aren't you his agent?
Justin, you know you're not a real doctor, right?
Of course I do. I just play one on TV.
Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
And welcome back to Blackbird Singing, where football and music collide. I'm Tony Lombardi here with Larry Dukes, and soon we'll be joined by Mike Major, who's the musical artist tonight. Mike's going to be performing some songs in and out of the breaks, and we're going to be sitting down with Mike, give you an inside look at Mike and where you can see him play. I think he's a real talented guy, and I think you'll agree with me. But Larry, before the break, we talked about the Ravens offense, good and bad. Okay, let's talk about the bad and save the good stuff for last.
Okay.
The bad, pretty obvious. They're really struggling to run the football.
Yes.
And it was apparent during the preseason, and I get that the preseason is a really bad barometer of things to come anymore because the players, a lot of the starters aren't on the field. So it's tough to kind of gauge what they're going to do and project what they're going to do in the regular season. But through the first 2 games, this is a Ravens offense that's really the banks on the ability to run the football, grind it out to close out games, and right now they're really struggling to get anything going.
Yeah, and I'm a really big believer, Tony, that in the preseason, your offensive line has to be a unit. And a lot of what creates a ground game is what's happening at the line of scrimmage with your offensive linemen. And I went out to the preseason games. I went out to practice. The offensive line rarely was all one unit going through plays together until we hit the season, and now with injuries, everybody's kind of jumbled around.
Well, I think if you look at what they did throwing the football, they did a fantastic job.
Pass blocking, they were fantastic.
And Patrick McCarry, he did a great job at left tackle.
Yeah.
And here's a guy that came in as a swing guy, a backup guard, a backup center, was forced into action at right tackle last year, playing the big position at left tackle, did a very serviceable job.
Yeah, but arguably, pass protection is a bit easier than run blocking. The complexity of the run blocks, the traps, the pulls,
the combo blocks.
Yeah, all the combinations that you can put into your blocking schema are sometimes what opens the holes. And then you throw in Ricard and a fullback blocking or a tight end blocking. It can get into a really complex package on the run offense.
I don't want to put it all on the offensive line, the struggles in the run game, because I think that the running backs have to own some of this too, because the holes that were there, sometimes they didn't take advantage of them. We're going to go through 2 plays that highlight that. On the one play, you've got Justice Hill running the football, and we may as well run that right now. Justice Hill he's got daylight along the left hash, Larry. This is a house call.
Yeah.
That is a house call right there.
And he
takes it out of bounds as if he's trying to save the clock.
Yeah, and he's taking it out right into where the traffic is. There's only 2 people to make a tackle, and he runs it out of bounds.
I'm looking at it again. They had that block schemed up well. I mean, and when you see these kinds of things, McCarry's got the guy on the edge sealed.
Right there.
This
there
is wide open. It's a house call.
And if you notice, we got 2 linemen coming downfield to throw key blocks if he cuts it up.
Right. So they have to own part of the problem too.
Sure.
The running backs.
I don't think they're seeing them. I don't think they're seeing the holes. It's again time. They haven't had a whole lot of time to kind of run through these progressions and see what's happening in front of them.
So the linemen at fault at some point.
Yeah.
The running backs, the play calling,
mm-hmm.
the scheme perhaps even.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put fault on the scheme because we've seen this scheme work very well in the past.
Yeah.
You know, with Greg Roman, that's his forte is to scheme out running attacks.
Yeah.
The play calling is a little different than scheme, in my opinion, because what are you doing against a specific defense? And do you have the ability to get out of those plays if what you called isn't going to work against that defense? I haven't seen that going on yet.
And you could see the Dolphins creeping up into the box because on first down we were going to put it in the hands of a running back, and typically we were going off guard, off tackle, and they jammed it. And they made penetration, and there was no place to go.
But maybe they went ahead with some of the play calls anyway for that very reason, because if you do get past that first line of defense, you saw what Lamar did.
Yeah, exactly.
And you saw what Hill should have done. And we're going to show another play here with Kenyon Drake. Same kind of thing. Pat Ricard has it blocked up on the outside. It looks like he's got room on the outside and navigate. Drake decides to cut it inside, and it's a failed play. So, and these are the kind of plays where you have to own the mistake, and he cuts it inside. It gets a gain of 1 or 2 yards, and
look at the hole.
He's got all this out here.
One guy to right.
He's got all those guys are outside.
Yep.
And he cuts it inside into the teeth of the defense.
Yep. Yeah, and you can see the frustration on Ricard. He's
he's throwing his hands up.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, what are you doing in there?
I did what I was supposed to do.
I'm sealing the outside for you to take it around,
right?
And you're cutting it up to where I'm pushing the guy to the inside.
Right. But this is part of the problem, I think, is because Drake hasn't been around very long.
Right.
They just acquired him after the last preseason game. Mike Davis hasn't been getting it done.
Yeah.
And Justice Hill, you see his vision or lack thereof.
But then Justice Hill, a couple of plays, he had a nice run. He seems to be at least hitting the hole with a burst. That
of those 3, he's the most decisive as to where he wants to go. Sometimes he's just not seeing the field the way he's supposed to be seeing the field.
Exactly.
So I wanted to bring up a couple of other plays too. This is Lamar connecting with Bateman on the first one, and
this is a beautiful play.
It's indefensible when it hits.
It is, and he's hitting Bateman as he's ready to go into full stride, and you knew he was gone.
And he's going up against Xavier Howard, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And before we played, I did want to mention also, I think it was ESPN's Next Gen Stats. They pointed out that the fastest that Marquise Brown ever ran with the football after a catch was like 21.3 miles per hour in his entire career with the Ravens. On this particular play, Bateman ran it at 21.65.
Wow.
So the notion that they lost wheels when Marquise left, I think this Bateman kid is going to be the real deal. And I love the way he snatches the ball. You can play it, Morgan. I love the way he snatches the ball out of the air and hits him right in stride. I actually thought that this guy with the angle was going to get him.
It looks like he should.
He ran past the angle.
Yep.
Or through the angle and goes in for a touchdown. Again, Ravens go up here 14-7, and you're thinking this passing game, Lamar is looking great. Last week we talked about them not getting to the line of scrimmage fast enough. This week they were up there with plenty of time. You saw Lamar check out of some plays, still with plenty of time just to get and he had like 7 or 8 seconds on the clock. He could snap it at any point, so they couldn't go, as we said last week, on your mark, get set, go.
Right. The defense had to respect that it could happen any time.
So credit Greg Roman and the offense for answering all the issues that the Dolphins delivered to them the year before.
One of the things that I haven't seen this year, I haven't seen in a long time from the Ravens, if they are able to get to the line of scrimmage with 8, 7, 6 seconds left on the play clock, we never seem to go on a hard count or on a different cadence because there's a couple times it's 3rd and 5, and just a little cadence change, maybe we get those guys that are trying to time this thing to jump, and suddenly, we're in a much better position for a first down.
I hear you. Those are the nuances of quarterbacking that I don't know that Lamar has perfected yet. But now that they are getting to the line of scrimmage a little bit sooner, and you saw Josh Allen do it on Monday night.
Monday night, yep.
They used it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And everyone in the stadium knew that it was coming, except the one guy that jumped off sides.
Exactly. If it's so powerful, and people that are really good at it, they draw people continuously, and it makes a difference in where things are in the game.
The next clip I wanted to show is a pass that Lamar threw to Mark Andrews, and I can't find the clip right now, but I know that Morgan has it. But he hits Andrews in that seam. He does like a little circle route from his tight end position, hits him in that right hash mark, in between defenders. And if you were looking for a pass where you think, or you're wondering if Lamar has really gotten it now in terms of throwing the football, that was a perfect example of just threading the needle, throwing it on time, throwing it before Mark turned around, and it was a beautiful connection.
It was reminiscent of the week before when he dropped that dime right in the end zone to Duvernay. Lamar is sharp, and so I have absolutely no criticism of how he's passing right now, and I think that he's on his way to a very strong season, which is great. We just need to bring everybody else with him.
Right. So, looking at the game, last week we talked about the stock up and stock down. One of the players whose stock was up was Patrick Queen.
Yeah. Wow.
That wasn't the case.
No. It's like the stock market.
Right.
We're climbing back up and then whammo.
Yeah.
Insignificant is the word I come up with this week. Irrelevant. He just didn't seem to be part of the game. And we saw this happen with him a couple other times where he has a good week and then all of a sudden he's absent. And there's others, but I was hoping that we've got a trend going, but one week doesn't make a trend. We need his play to be at a different level.
One of the things that you see with Queen and where he seems to struggle is when the opposing offense spreads things out, and they do it with speed too.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got speed at the tight end with Gesicki. They've got speed on the edges with Waddle and Hill, and they've got speed with Mostert too. The running back, because he can get out in space.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see this level of speed the rest of the season.
Probably won't.
And we're certainly not going to see it this week.
No.
So it's hoped that that's the problem, and that suddenly the Queen's got it back.
So what I have, Larry, in terms of stock up, I've got Lamar, Bateman, the pass blocking. Your thoughts on I know we talked about Bateman briefly a minute ago, but what about now with respect to what you've seen so far through 2 games and the maturation process with Rashad Bateman?
Well, I think he has, number one, come way further than I expected at this point in time. I think he's showing the abilities and promise that we were all hoping for. And while I watched Marquise have a good game for the Cardinals, it's not like I'm missing having Marquise on the field. This Bateman is a true on his way to being a number one.
And Duvernay's a very, very adequate number 2. He's running his routes on time. He's making plays. He's got 3 touchdowns through 2 games. One of which, of course, was the big return for a touchdown. But that guy can move too.
Yeah, he can. Yeah, this receiver core is in pretty good stead at the moment. Let's keep them healthy.
Well, they're thin, but I think that Demarcus Robinson is a guy that has shown already that he could be a good number 3 guy.
Yep.
So in terms of the other guy, I thought with his stock up is Marcus Williams.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 interceptions in 2 games, but
almost had a
fourth one. Yeah, and a fourth one would have sealed it for us.
That would have been big.
But again, a guy comes in and we paid some serious bucks for him, and he's living up to it. Yep.
So we're going to take another short break, and when we come back from the break, I think we're going to hear our musical guest tonight for the first time.
Very good.
What do you think?
Yeah,
Magic Mike?
We'll see.
All right, we'll take a quick break. This is Blackbird Singing, where football and music collide, here live at Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds. We'll be right back.
Last season, the Ravens were crushed by injuries, but even the players who did not miss time still had to deal with aches and pains. Just like the weekend warriors out there who play basketball, flag football, golf,
Major, right?
The list goes on.
Yeah.
Instead of pain meds like ibuprofen and acetaminophen, manage your pain with CBD products from Panacea. CBD products are so beneficial, non-addictive, and less expensive than big pharma products and over-the-counter meds without the side effects. Panacea is offering our audience a 30% discount by using discount code RSR at checkout when visiting PanaceaLife.com. Oh, and one more thing. They also have amazing products for ailing pets. Panacea Life Sciences, CBD products that work. Rock Spring Financial Group is the premier local Maryland mortgage brokerage firm. They are known for the hometown feel with a customer experience level that is unrivaled. They specialize in all home loan types, whether it's conventional, FHA, VA, and debt consolidation. Rock Spring covers it all. So when you're tired of issues with online mortgage shopping and want the human touch, look no further than Rock Spring Financial Group, LLC. Give Rick Metzger a call or visit them at rockspringfinancial.com.
We're back.
And welcome back to Blackbird Singing, where football and music collide. We're going to be hearing shortly from our musical guest this evening, Mike Major. I immediately thought of Major Tom.
Major Tom.
Ground
this
control.
is Major Tom, the ground control.
Yeah.
I'm floating in a very precarious way.
Did you ever see Jimmy Fallon do that?
No.
Oh,
Is
it's
it good?
amazing. It's really, really good.
Well, since you're telling stories and Jimmy Fallon stuff, let me take you down memory lane.
Uh-oh.
It has to do with
Am
the
I
weather.
involved in this?
Yes. It is, well, some
That's
stories.
our show for tonight, folks.
Yeah, so some stories we can't tell. But the weather actually is doing this to me. This reminds me tonight here at Uncle's, we're at the Tiki Bar and the wind is starting to kick up. This reminds me of the old Memorial Stadium days. Not many people know Tony was in the press box, and I was on the field for the old Baltimore Colts. And I remember a game, a very windy game, where Tony was having a good old time doing spotting and support in the Colts press box, and I'm down on the field, and the wind was blowing, and my jacket, my clothes, I could hardly walk.
How you doing
in
down
one
there,
direction.
Lar?
Yeah, and Tony was eating crab cakes in the press box.
Crab cakes. Oh, and also I sat behind the cheerleaders.
Yeah, tough life.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we remember. At least I remember those days where you were you're in the catbird seat while I was down on the field.
You and Dave Workowski.
Yes, absolutely.
You were down on the field. It was nice and warm. Sometimes got a little too toasty in there, though.
Yeah. And the crab cakes were way too good, right?
Sometimes they weren't hot enough, so I had to send it back.
Yeah. Yep. Well, this is the payback tonight, so you can get a little
well, it
taste
does
of the
feel
real
like a
weather.
tiki bar on the beach right here.
It does. But
so Hawaiian tiki bar.
Yeah, but not at 50-some degrees, right?
Yeah. So
okay.
We did promise you an interview that I had with Jeff Zrebiec earlier in the program, or earlier today, and we're going to give that to you right now. It's a really informative interview, and of the always informative Jeff Zrebiec.
Hello and welcome back to Blackbird Singing, broadcast every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. at Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds here in Falston. Joining me now via Zoom is Jeff Zrebiec from The Athletic. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, Tony, I'm doing well. Always good to talk to you.
Always good to talk. Hey, the game on Sunday, I'm sure it took you by surprise, took everybody by surprise, up 21 points in the fourth quarter. Talk about the vibe in the press box watching this whole thing unfold, and then talk about the vibe in the locker room after the game.
Yeah, I think people in the press box were just stunned. I mean, you know, they were kind of, there's some games where, they build a little bit of a lead, but you're still not feeling all that sure about it, whether that's because the other team's driving a lot or whatever, or the Ravens made a couple big plays and otherwise they weren't doing much. This was one of those games where they just seemed to be in complete control. I mean, there was, I'm not saying the press box was celebrating, but there's like a celebratory environment in the whole stadium. I mean, they had Lamar's picture up there about the record he set with 100-yard rushing yards. People were going nuts, and all of a sudden, and it happened so quickly. This wasn't like a gradual thing. It just, in like a 5, 6, 7 minute span of the game, everything turned. So I think it was kind of more shock. Like, what did we just watch? What just happened? It was a ticked off locker room, that's for sure. Like these guys, I don't think anyone's pressing the panic button in a week 2 loss, but these guys know how hard it is to win NFL games, and they know it's only going to get tougher. And to have a 21-point lead at home against the AFC team who you might be jockeying for playoff position with in a couple of months, that's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, they have no choice in the matter but to move on. But, that one is one that could linger a little bit. We could be looking back later in the season on, wow, those 7-8 minutes certainly changed things here as the Ravens are trying to mount a playoff run.
I wanted to read a quote from John Harbaugh, and I know you featured this in your article in The Athletic today, but for the benefit of our audience, it goes like this. It's not like the end of the world. This is John Harbaugh speaking on Monday. These are not complicated things. These are all things that have been coached and are in the system, and everybody knows after it happens. Oh, that's right. Got to get that right. But in the heat of battle, when those routes are running up on you really fast, things are flying in front of your eyes. That's what football is. That's what makes it so tough. It's not easy. It's not lines on paper. You just keep working on it. Now, Jeff, I've played amateur football and in the sandlot, even drawing plays in the dirt as a kid. If you're up really big in the game, you don't let the ball get over your head. If they want to, as Hank Stram used to say, matriculate the ball down the field, you let them do it, right? Yeah. Eat up the clock. But you don't let them throw the ball over your head. He said it's not complicated. I agree it's not complicated. But why did this even happen?
Yeah. I think after the game there were questions, what's missing here? Like what are these players not? Is it a scheme issue? Is it complicated? Is the defense too complicated for some of those guys? But if you look at those individual touchdowns, they were just basic stuff. I think there was I'm not going to pin all of it on Kyle Hamilton, but I think in a couple instances, there was just instances of a rookie trying way too hard to make a play and just losing his head out there. And let's do the 48-yard touchdown to Hill that I think made it a 1-score game. Mm-hmm. Peters plays it, and Hamilton tries to jump her out or gets nosy, as Harbaugh says, of Waddle in the middle of the field across her, and Hill runs right by him. I mean, that is 101. Every safety in the NFL, every top college safety knows he's the deep guy there. He is the deep middle third of the field there. He needs to not allow Hill to get by him. And yet Hamilton is trying so hard to make a play and wants to either lay a big hit on Waddle or intercept the ball that he gets kind of greedy. I mean, that's basic. That's not scheme. That's just basic. A young player having a mind cramp and making a big mistake at a key moment. The short touchdown, Craycraft, I think his name. I mean, one that was, Tua made a good play spinning out of the Broderick Washington sack attempt. I think you got to give Tua credit there, but Pepe Williams was staring in the backfield. He just let his man, and his man just needed a little bit of step, and he scores there. He just got caught kind of with his I guess his hands in the cookie jar, so to speak, and his eyes weren't in the right place. Those kind of things happen to young players. The one that the 60-yarder is just that they didn't line up right. That's the one I would like to know more of. And Marcus Williams wasn't saying, and Kyle Hamilton said he had something to do yesterday and wasn't available. So I wanted to get a little bag, like, how did they do that? And this is probably on me and other reporters. We probably should ask John, if you saw that they weren't lined up correctly and had the safety over top of Armour Davis, then why didn't you take a timeout? Or did you, that stuff happens fast. They were faking a blitz, and they thought a safety was going to drop back and sprint on the other side of but both safeties were lined up on the other side of the field. Hill's damn fast. That's a lot of ground to cover to get on, upside of him there. So, it was just, I agree. This was not complicated stuff. This was football 101 stuff that young players in the heat of the moment, and I'm sure some veterans made some mistakes too there. I don't want to put all the young kids, but it was, the touchdowns were primarily young players making huge mistakes that they know a lot better of, to make.
Jeff, as a percentage of adjusted cap, the Ravens have the most amount of money invested in the secondary in the league, according to Spotrac. Now, when you consider that, does this become an issue at some point for Chris Hewitt if this continues?
I thought that same thing. I was thinking about that yesterday. Danton Lynn is another guy who's been there the last 2 years. Chris Hewitt's a guy that has gotten 2 defensive coordinator interviews. They think very highly of, and I don't think you're looking for a fall guy right now. But this kind of can't continue. And I wrote the story today about the secondary and how they're just not getting much bang for their buck. That it's hard to point and to put all your eggs in that basket, only because a lot of these guys have just never been healthy. Like we were talking in the press box, Tony, if Brandon Stevens is healthy, and I'm not even saying Brandon Stevens is all that. He's a first-year NFL cornerback. He played safety. I'm not sure they don't win that game if Brandon Stevens is healthy. They kind of just wore down and were forced to rely on younger guys. And Stevens is a little more advanced than those younger guys, and can do different things. But so it's just tough to totally kill them when injuries, it just seems to keep happening. And also, I think the front office has to wear it in a lot of ways because they've clearly prioritized help on the back end over, the pass rush and over linebackers. And they're just not spending much money at all. I think they're 26th this year in cap devoted to linebackers. So, they've gone the route of, we're going to prioritize covering rather than rushing. And that just really hasn't worked in the last couple of years. So I think it's a lot of things here, Tony. But sure, you keep having these blow ups and you're 32nd rank. 19 games now. This is a 19 game sample size. This, I had a lot of people saying, it's easy to pick on them after that game, but 5 400-yard throwers in 19 games. That's absurd. No other team has allowed more than 1 during that span. They've allowed 5. That just can't happen. They need to fix it. And, you look at the Bengals game last year, it was a varsity versus JV. They just didn't have enough healthy cornerbacks to play. But there's other times where they've had more than enough and they've had these blow-ups late in games. And that's the things that you have to start asking questions. That's when guys and position coaches start getting on the hot seat a little bit.
You talked about things that are surprising and things that aren't performing to the level of expectation. The Ravens running game, we saw Jeff in the preseason. It wasn't really going anywhere, but the way the preseason is anymore, how much stock can you put into that? But it's starting to manifest itself in the regular season. The Ravens had a hard time getting on track. Do you think it's the running backs? Do you think it's the scheme? Do you think it's the play calling, the offensive line, or is it all the above? Because there were a couple of plays that we saw floating around on Twitter that the Ravens left out on the field, namely a run by Justice Hill that he took it wide left when he had the right on the hash mark. It would have been gone to the house. And then there was another run by Kenyon Drake later in the game where Pat Ricard had his man sealed off on the outside. And he took it inside. It was a gain of 1. So what in your estimation is going on with this rushing attack?
I think I think you said it. I think it's all of the above. I think there's too many offensive linemen not winning at the point of attack and not getting much of a push. Look, Patrick McCarry's, you have to give him a lot of credit. He's battled his butt off. I think he's done a great job pass blocking. He's going to get a lot of Matthew Judon this week. He's another huge week for him, but he's not like necessarily a powerful run blocker. Moses necessarily isn't a powerful run blocker. Linderbaum's going to have to get bigger and stronger. So, I think that's the problem. They need to start winning more up front, getting off the line of scrimmage and winning at the point of attack. I think the running backs have been big time disappointments. I don't think you can leave them out of it here. Like you mentioned a couple plays, Mike Davis is 230 pounds. You can't tell me he can't get 1 yard on like 4 or 5 different carries in that game. It just seemed like some of the running backs are just running in the back alignment and just kind of going down. And then the third element of that is, you'd like to see, Greg Roman's known as a run game master. And what did they finish? 3rd in the league last year in rushing yards per game, despite the running backs they were rolling out. I mean, as little juice as Drake and Mike Davis have shown, Le'Veon Bell had even less last year. So it's not like they were relying on, a whole lot better of a group last year, and they still were able to run the ball. So I think Roman needs to figure it out and kind of scheme around some of the issues there. Dobbins is going to help. I would at least consider, if Dobbins isn't ready this week, bringing up Tyler Beatty, who I know didn't have a good summer, but at least he has some burst there. Maybe gets the outside. You can create some things there. And I don't know how long, I know this fan base loves Ben Cleveland. I want to see Ben Cleveland do something. But at some point you might want to see what else you have, because that's the one move other than Ronnie Stanley coming back up front that you could make that might solidify the offensive line. So if they don't run the ball this week, I think they're going to have to consider drastic changes. I may even make 1 or 2 tweaks this week, but I certainly wouldn't allow this to keep going, because this offense isn't going to be what they need to be if they're not running the football at least at an above average rate.
Jeff, you're around the facility all the time, and you've seen Ronnie Stanley out there at practice, and you mentioned him before, mentioned Patrick McCary. Done a great job at left tackle.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him play somewhere else. But at the same time, Ronnie Stanley, wasn't he a full participant one day last week, and still he's not out there on the field? What's it going to take to get him out there?
I think Ronnie's going to have to feel 100% comfortable, and I'm not. When I don't know what some of these guys are going through, I'm always hesitant to point fingers. But I mean, yesterday it looked like he was doing more than he has at any point. But when you see him out in the practice field, he doesn't look like a rehabbing guy. Like, look, J.K. Dobbins looks, I don't know about recently, but those first 3-4 weeks, J.K. Dobbins looked like a rehabbing guy. The team's taken some hits for that, but he looked like a guy who was nowhere near ready to play. Ronnie Stanley looks to be in good shape, and he's moving well, but yet he's not doing certain drills. So I don't want to conclude anything, beyond the bigger picture. I'm sure there's still things that are troubling him. But for now, he at least looks the part. And, I would have to imagine this week, based on what I saw yesterday, seems like another step in the ramp up. And if it's not going to be in the next couple of weeks, I just don't know when it is. I mean, he's been practicing for a while now. He looks good. It was such a career altering injury. But I think athletes all the time talk about learning to play through some things and basically adapting to the new reality. And I think that's going to be part of it for Ronnie mentally. I'm not saying he's never going to be the same player. I'm not saying that the ankle's never going to heal. I don't want to put myself in his shoes there, but I think it's certainly possible he's never going to feel the same way again. And he's just going to have to learn to play through that if he wants to be out there and to sort of, I don't want to say compensate, but just sort of deal with how he's feeling. Because at some point you get to a point where this is what you have, this is what you are, and you either give it a shot or you don't.
The Ravens invested first-round picks in defense each of the last 3 years. Patrick Queen, Odafe Oweh, and now Kyle Hamilton. Now, that's a lot of draft capital, Jeff, for guys who really haven't played to the level of their draft pick. Queen has struggled. They're even talking to Blake Martinez about coming onto the team. I want to get to that in a second. And you have Oweh, who is a tremendous athlete. We're out there in summer, Jeff, and he destroys the Ravens offensive lineman, but he just doesn't seem to get it done on Sundays. Now I've heard, he's pressuring the quarterback, he's doing this and the other, and sacks isn't everything, but at the same time, you'd like to see him take down the quarterback.
Yeah.
And then he's not getting it done. And when I watch him on his one-on-one matchups, he doesn't really have a well-developed arsenal of moves. It's just he's got to beat you with speed, and if he doesn't, he's not going to get there.
And I think the frustrating part of that, Tony, is he works so hard after every practice. Every practice, he's over there working at that little station for the linebackers, defensive linemen, doing different pass rush drills. Often Justin Houston's out there, often Calais Campbell. Owe is one of the last players off the field, the last on pretty much every practice. So this guy is working his tail off. He wants to be great. It just hasn't clicked yet. I'm kind of still bullish on him, Tony. I like what I see. I think he's going to have to learn. I mean, when they drafted him, they knew there was going to have to be some development that he's going to have to do. But unfortunately, when you only have two outside linebackers really on the team, when one guy is not not getting to the quarterback, he's going to stick out. And I think that's kind of been the case of Owe. They really need him to turn this around. They need, it was interesting. Harbaugh blatantly said he needs to play a lot better. And then Harbaugh acknowledged he had breakfast with him this week to kind of give him a pep talk. He needs to figure it out because this defense is going to struggle without him providing that presence off the edge. And I do agree with you, Tony. I mean, that's the biggest issue right now. The injuries and some of these young first-round picks or these young day 1 and day 2 draft picks that just really haven't taken the next step. I'm not saying they can't, but they just haven't to this point. Now, Kyle Hamilton has struggled, but okay, he's played 2 games. I think we have to understand that. Queen's been around long enough to not have these one really good game and one really bad game stretches. I think there's some frustration there with the inconsistency, and he's got to figure it out. I did not think he played well at all. I think Pro Football Focus had him giving up like 115 passing yards. And then, guys like Malik Harrison hasn't become a regular contributor. I think you want more consistency from Matabike, and we talked about Owe. This is a year where they needed some of these young drafted players to really step up. We haven't seen it yet on a consistent enough level. And I hate to be kind of prisoner of the moment. I think we need to evaluate after more than 2 games, but this is what we have now. And when you're giving up 3 touchdown leads in the fourth quarter, you sort of look for everything. And there's always a lot of finger pointing.
Now, Blake Martinez and Jason Pierre-Paul, Jason Pierre-Paul, they were both in with the Ravens yesterday, both left the building without a contract. But I think just the invitations, Jeff, are indicative that the Ravens already, I know you said not being a prisoner of the moment, but I think that they've seen enough to say we've got to fix this before it gets too far into the season. We saw that before, and I think it was 2019 when they struggled with the pass defense early in the season, and they made a move to go out and get Marcus Peters, and that changed things around dramatically. And they went from 2-2 to 14-2. So I think where there's smoke, there's fire here. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I also think one other issue with that, and they don't do anything by accident. They know those visits are going to get out. And that puts Josh Bynes on alert. I mean, Josh Bynes has 2 tackles in 2 games. And for all the talk about their secondary blow-ups, the run defense has been soft. I mean, that's not been a Ravens run defense. I mean, a key play in that game was, I forgot it was Mostert or Edmonds, but had the, 19, 20-yard run on that final drive to set up the 1st and goal. I mean, that can't happen. They've given up too many big runs too. They're not really stopping the run either. So I think certainly they knew a Blake Martinez visit would get Queen and Bynes' attention too. And obviously Pierre-Paul visit is going to get Owe's attention. So I don't think those are by accident that those guys came in after a game like that. But yeah, I think you're already having to line up different options. Tyus Bowser will be in, he looks good. You see him running around on the side of the field. He's eligible to play in week 5. I think he'll be able to hit the ground running. That doesn't mean I think he's going to be necessarily there in week 5, but I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think he's a far ramp up guy. But that's a long way away, Tony, and there's some big games ahead against some really good offenses. Right. So, yeah, I think they're going to have to consider some things. I think the roster construction was a little curious at times, specifically with the outside linebacker. At inside linebacker, you had the 3 special teams guys, Welch, Phillips, and Ross. Now Ross is has a boot on his foot, so you don't know how long he's going to be out. But reality is those guys weren't playing defensive snaps anyway. So I think they need to consider. It reminds me sort of that Browns game, Tony, in 2019, where they got booed out of the stadium. Yep. And I forgot how many rush yards Browns had, but that was embarrassing. And then Earl Thomas and Brandon Williams got into it after the game. And, they made some moves after that game. I think Bynes came in after that game, and might even been Justin Ellis came in shortly there. This week reminded me a little of that game with them putting these guys on notice a little, saying, look, we're not going to hesitate to make changes if this continues.
Right. Now, you mentioned Stanley before and Dobbins as well. Any chance either of those guys go this week in New England?
Yeah, I don't see Stanley. Maybe I'll be surprised, but he's still not, the way it works is we're out there for, as we're out there for the first part of practice, and Stanley's been doing the individual stuff, but then the podium's on the side of the field. And I've been making note in the podium of the people walking off, who's finishing practice, who's not. And I've yet to see Stanley walking off at the end of practice, which means he's been going in early and not taking part. Until he starts taking part of full practice, I'm just not going to project him to play. Dobbins, I don't know the deal there. I wish I knew more about it. I just don't know if there's an arbitrary date they're waiting for. I don't know if they're waiting, they have the GPS tracker. I don't know if they're waiting to see certain stuff, but he's been practicing for about a month and a half now. So again, it's one of those situations where I don't know what another week's going to change with him. I just don't know. I'm not criticizing their decision for it. So to me, he's any week now, any day now. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays Sunday. I really wouldn't. In fact, I think it would make a lot of sense. I think it would give him a little bit of a boost, regardless of how he looks. I think just having JK back will bring some energy. But we'll see. I don't know. Again, what's going to happen? What's going to be different if you wait a little longer? I just don't know the answer to that. He's been practicing for long enough. He feels ready to go. So I think you have to see at this point what he has and whether he can really help.
You think that Travis Jones might make his regular season debut this week?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. I think the Patriots, they would love to just run the Ravens off the field and grind it out. And if they can play that way, they will. Jones's run defense is the question there, but I think it's time for Travis Jones. I don't know if he was just not ready last week, but you're talking one play could have made a big difference in that game, whether it was a sack or a big hit or a quarterback loss, and he's the type of guy that can make that kind of play. I think it's time to see what he can do, even if it's just kind of as part of a rotation, getting him 15, 20 snaps.
Last question for you, Jeff. Marlon Humphrey was not on the field. I believe it was for 15 plays in the Ravens game against the Dolphins. During those 15 plays, the Dolphins scored 4 touchdowns. So obviously he's important to that secondary. He's got this groin issue, this soft tissue injuries. These drive me crazy. I just wonder if this could be a lingering thing, or is this something where maybe he sits a game and it clears itself up, or they don't even know.
Yeah. And, likely came up on the injury report with another groin injury. We've had 5 or 6 groin injuries since week 3. I think I expect Humphrey to play this week. I expect him to be moving better, given another week. If I recall correctly, he had this injury last year too, over the summer, during the preseason, and you have the benefit of having a little more time in the preseason. So, they need him healthy. I think in all the talk about the secondary, one of the encouraging things, Tony, has been when Marlon Humphrey's on the field these first 2 weeks, I think he's played very well. I think you've seen the physical Marlon Humphrey return. I mean, they haven't tried him very much, so there's been no splash plays, but I think he's been physical as a tackler. I think he's been in the right spot more often than not. And I think he looks like he's rounding out into the form he was showing, before he had that tough stretch in the injury last year. But I expect him to be back. I think Peters will have a little more, I think he'll be playing more snaps next week. I expect Brandon Stevens to be back. It's hard to say they're fully healthy with still Peters kind of, working his way back and Humphrey dealing with the groin, but they're a lot closer. They should be a lot closer to being fully healthy this week than they certainly were last week.
Jeff Zrebiec from The Athletic. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Tony, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
We want to thank the incomparable Jeff Zrebiec. Jeff does a great job, one of the best beat guys on the planet, and works for The Athletic. I would definitely recommend you subscribe to The Athletic. It's like $2 a month, Larry, and Jeff will bring you the best there is in Ravens coverage. So thank Jeff a lot for joining us and joining me for that interview, which I thought was very informative. Now, we talked about Blackbird singing being where football and music collide. Our special guest tonight for the music portion of the collision between football and music is Mike Major, and we're going to introduce him now. He's going to play a song for you, and check Mike Major out on Facebook, and maybe he can tell you where else you can reach him, but really talented guy, and we're going to give it away to Mike, who's going to play.
why I should stay. Yeah, I told you that I love you, and there ain't no more to say.
All right, give it up for Mike Major.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, good job.
Great job, Mike.
Yep, thank you.
Mike Major, our musical guest tonight. So, Larry, it's that time.
Yep.
We'll wrap this show up with our predictions. We were both wrong last week. I said 22-20 Ravens.
Yep, and I was 27-21 Ravens, and didn't turn out.
We should have been right.
Yes. Should have been close, at least.
Shoulda.
Coulda, woulda. Yeah.
Didn't happen.
No.
It's going to happen this week.
Yep. Yep. So what do you think?
I think the Ravens are right now a 3-point favorite in New England, and the over-under is 43. So the people in Vegas think it's going to be a low-scoring game, relatively speaking. I have a feeling that Belichick saw some things in the Ravens' defense he's going to test again. They've got some guys with some wheels, not like the Dolphins do, but, they've got some receivers that can stretch the field. We saw with Aguilar had a good game against the Steelers. Steelers have a pretty stout defense. So I think they're going to test the Ravens. I think they'll score some points, but I also think the Ravens are going to score some points. I think the Ravens' offense is just scratching the surface of what it can be. I think Lamar's on fire. I think he's going to continue to be on fire. And I think the Ravens they're going to go well over the total of 43. I have the Ravens winning the game 31-24.
Gotcha. I have it a little bit differently. I don't think it'll be as many points as you've predicted.
Because Belichick was going to want to take the air out of the ball.
Exactly.
But
literally. And so I've got it 27 Ravens, 17 New England.
27-17. Okay. Well, you're right at the number almost. 44.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's our show for today, folks. We want to thank everybody for joining us out here at Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds. We want to give props to our musical artist, Mike Major. Hope you check him out on Facebook and come out to see him. We're out here at Uncle's at 2315 Bel Air Road here in beautiful Falston. Tiki Bar, we've got the winds to go along with the palm trees right now. So we'll see you again next week here at Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds. Thanks for joining us.
Great crowd. Bring it out.
Give my hand there. That's a wonderful job they're doing. Bringing some notice and recognition of this wonderful place here. I'm Michael Major. I'm going to be staying around, all right, till I think it's 5:30 a.m., right? I believe, yeah. Keep your bar tabs open. Go momentarily. girl right in the wagon. She crawled in and she took control. She was tired 'cause the mind was dragging. And I said, get some sleep and dream rock and roll. It's like a picture she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her head. She woke up and took me by the hand. She gonna love me in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. Your face was like that of an angel, and her long legs were tan and brown. You better keep your eyes on the road, son, and you better hustle this sweet down. It's like a picture she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her head. She woke up and took me by the hand. She gonna love me in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. Put her out, oh, in a town that was so small that you could door up from end to end. A dirt road Main Street, she took off in her bare feet. But it's a shame how only passing through again. It's like a picture she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her head. She woke up and took me by the hand. She gonna love me in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. It's like a picture she was laying there, moonlight dancing off her head. She woke up and took me by the hand. We made love in my Chevy van, and that's alright with me. Oh yeah, it's alright with me. kiss. Sweat far covers me. Can we die? Can we picture this with a postcard? Ocean violet and blue. And mountains strike your poses to feel the heat between me and you. Just even stand there. The real world's so cold. Maybe I'm just too demanding. Maybe I'm just like my father, too bold. Maybe I'm just like my mother. She never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? This is what it says. Doves cry. Doves cry. The touch of the feel in my stomach. Without dreams inside. You got the butterflies all tied up. You chase doves out proud. Can you just leave me standing? The world is cold. Maybe I'm just too demanding. Maybe I'm just like my father, too bold. Maybe I'm just like my mother. She's never satisfied. She's never satisfied. We scream at each other. Well, this is what it sounds like when doves cry. Doves cry. I can just leave you standing. The real world's so cold. Maybe just too demanding. Maybe just like my father, too bold. Maybe just like my mother. She's never satisfied. She never satisfied. Scream at each other. This is what it sounds like when doves cry. Yeah. Doves cry. I hear you over there. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. gonna tell you when it's too late? Who's gonna tell you things aren't so great? You can't go home thinking nothing's wrong. Oh, who's gonna drive you home tonight? And who's gonna pick you up when you fall? Who's gonna hang it up when you call? Who's gonna pay attention to your dreams? Who's gonna plug the reeds when you scream? Can't go on thinking nothing's wrong. Oh, who's gonna drive you home tonight? Who's gonna hold you down